More than 3 years after he was arrested in Iraq and accused of the biggest leak of classified military documents in U.S. history, Private First Class Bradley Manning is finally getting his day in court today. The 25-year-old former intelligence officer is facing 22 charges, ranging from possession and transfer of documents to violating the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act to his most serious charge, aiding the enemy. If he is found guilty, Manning could spend the rest of his life behind bars. And if you were wondering why you haven't heard much about this historic trial from the news today, here's why.
It has been thousands and thousands of years since the woolly mammoth walked across the face of the earth. But guess what? It could soon return.
Up next, Road Warriors, what happens when a former president pedals 100 kilometers in 3 days? We'll talk to the only reporter who went biking with this guy. It's Bush and some veterans.
I know you have seen the internet sensation known as Grumpy Cat. Well, it seems success hasn't gone to this kitty's head.
We've got new photos surfacing of the bloody crime scene where Olympian Oscar Pistorius shot his girlfriend a few months ago. They show that blood-spattered bathroom in which Riva Steenkamp was shot.
Well, if there's one thing we know now, it's that the news is really in the eye of the beholder. But Bradley Manning's trial will no doubt make it into the history books. Whether that much can be said about Oscar Pistorius or Grumpy Cat depends on who is writing those history books. Now, RT has sent an entire team down to Fort Meade today to cover this monumental trial. My producer Andrew Blake has been sitting in on the courtroom since early this morning, and he joins me now with the very latest. Hi there, Andrew. Can you tell us what happened today? What came out of today?
Hey, Megan. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, this is 3 years in the making. It's been, it was May 25th, 2010, I believe, when Manning was first picked up in Baghdad. He's been in pretrial custody ever since. And if I may, I do believe this is way more important than Grumpy Cat. PFC Manning was in the courtroom today for the official start of the court-martial. We've been doing these pretrial hearings going back since December 2011, but things are really starting to take shape today already. The event started off this morning with some basic house cleaning, just going over the rules of the court, what we're going to expect during the next perhaps 12 weeks here in Fort Meade outside of Baltimore. And then from there, we heard opening statements from the prosecution and then David Coombs, the civilian defense attorney for PFC Manning, who's actually being represented, being supported thanks to over $1 million worth of donations that have come in through the Bradley Manning Support Network. And those supporters were outside today at Fort Meade rallying. They had a vigil starting around 7 a.m. this morning. It was great. It was disgusting. A lot of them are in the courtroom right now in off-site facilities watching live. There's a lot of people here, and actually for once a lot of media too, which is great for the case of PFC Manning, who could spend the rest of his life in prison for what many people say is a heroic act.
Now, as you had mentioned, Andrew, I understand that this started off with the prosecutor presenting his case. Were there any surprises there?
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't really say there were many surprises, but what we did see from the prosecution was, for the first time in a while, they were really trying to drive home this argument that PFC Manning actually conspired with WikiLeaks, conspired with Julian Assange, and more or less took orders from him. He wanted to know what WikiLeaks wanted to release. He looked for that information, allegedly, and then provided it to WikiLeaks. In turn, prosecutors say that Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula benefited due to PFC Manning's actions. Now, keep in mind, they're saying that Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula benefited because Osama bin Laden received files that were published on WikiLeaks. And if you know anything about how the internet works, if something is published on the internet, on a public website, anyone, Osama bin Laden or myself, has access to that file. So by saying that releasing the materials to WikiLeaks, by having this information published on the internet, and that aided a terrorist organization, there's going to be a really dangerous precedent here for journalists, whistleblowers, all sorts of sources, people of all sorts, depending on the outcome of this trial, which is expected to run for another 12 weeks.
And Andrew, who was in the court with you today, and what was Bradley Manning's demeanor?
You know, it's actually kind of funny. For the first time, the media center, the adjacent facility near the courtroom here at Fort Meade, actually had every single seat full. At least this morning, all 70 seats were booked until around lunch recess. A handful of journalists have left, but you know, there's journalists in the courtroom itself. There's supporters in the courtroom itself. I saw Pulitzer Prize-winning war correspondent Chris Hedges here. Dr. Cornel West was here. I've heard Daniel Ellsberg was here. Michael Ratner, the attorney for WikiLeaks, was here. Like I said, there was dozens and dozens of people here this morning marching outside, holding up signs, trying to gain support, garner support for PFC Manning. And it's something that we've been seeing build up and build up and build up for the course of 3 years now. It really pinnacled this weekend when there were rallies here in Fort Meade and dozens of cities across the world. It might have taken 3 years to get some media attention, but slowly but surely, people are starting to pay attention. At least they were this morning before lunch.
And Andrew, we have a short amount of time left, but what's next for this trial?
12 very, very, very long weeks. This trial is expected to go into August, going from around 9:30 to 6 every single day. We've only heard from one witness so far today. There's another 2 expected to take the stand later, and then from there, we really don't know what's going to happen. The prosecution is going to call a number of Army peers of PFC Manning who are going to testify about his access to this information, what this information was, what the seriousness of this information meant when going into allegedly the hands of the enemy. I know Adrian Lamo, the chat correspondent who spoke with Bradley in May 2010 is expected to testify at some point. I'm not sure when. And
we're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much for joining us. RT Web producer Andrew Blake, thank you.